A global namaste to every one of you who are watching us live today. Hello, my name is Nishit Kotak. I'm here with the team from Hindu Academy. If you're a new member who's just joined us, welcome. You're in for a treat. Let me explain how this broadcast usually works. We meet every Saturday, 2 o'clock UK time, and the objective is to have a healthy, robust discussion on anything to do with Hinduism. So, how can you get involved? So, follow us on our live stream channels. So, we're live on YouTube and we're live on Facebook at our handles Hindu Academy. Secondly, you can share this broadcast with your friends and family. The more people that join the conversation, the better it is as an experience for every one of us. And number three, you can join in the conversation by leaving us your comments, your thoughts, your questions in the chat box wherever you are watching this show from. So what we are going to be doing is starting with a topic. Today's topic is a continuation of the last week's topic, which is around the Bhagavad Gita. And this is one of the most revered sort of texts that we have in Hinduism, at least for most mainstream Hindu followers. And so it's a very long topic that could not be covered in one seating last week. So we're going to carry on with the discussion with it. So without any further ado, let me just first share a focus topic video for the day. We will then come back for a discussion around the video, and we'll carry on from there. So bear with me as I bring forward the video for the day. If somebody is beyond materialism and jealousy, but he is lazy, is laziness a big hurdle to overcome?
I hope you're not talking about yourself, Pratik. I'm worried now. Let's look. See, the whole of this creation is made of three particular attributes of kind of threads. They're called guna, three guna. One is called sattva, other is called rajas, third is called tamas. Now, tamas is embedded in creation. Inertia is in the physical world. Inertia, in the human terms, it is kind of laid back, kind of happy to be ignorant about reality. So this is embedded in creation. It's not that you are a villain. We all have these three threads, all of us. Maybe I have a little bit more of these, a little bit less of that, but so we all have it. These three threads hold us together, never single, all three tied up. One is less important, the other are more prominent. The thing is this is very simple. Again, Bhagavad Gita teaches beautifully. It says, it is better to be active. Action is better than inaction. So if you are tamasi, means full of inertia, first rule is become active, my friend. It may be for the wrong reason. It may be doing things which are weird, but still be active rather than be inactive, because you're like a piece of stone then. So show that you are a living thing, so become active. This is the first thing in Bhagavad Gita. Action is better than inaction. The second thing we say is act. This is going from tamas, inertia, to rajas, activity. Then we put in the caveat. But from rajas, just being active, start to act in a selfless manner, because most of us are automatically geared to act in a selfish manner. I want to eat this, I want to go there, I want to visit this, I want to go and see this play, I want to go on tour. So we all have this kind of selfish motivation for our action. So the third thing that comes in the Bhagavad Gita is from rajas, from just being active, become sattvic. Act for the greater good rather than your private good, because that will make you into a little nothing but a kind of animal chewing his food and sitting in the corner. But he's active, but not anymore. You're just an animal surviving. But when you start living for others or living for the greater good, you're moving from rajas to sattva. This means the highest attribute, turning you into a spiritual being. So, if you are stuck with the tamas, move to rajas. First, be active, go and play football, whatever. And then secondly, try and play a football whereby somebody else benefits, somebody's health is kind of improved or whatever. I mean, it's lightening up, but this is the process.
So there we go. What a fantastic way to start the session for today. And I think you can see in Jay Bai's actions what he was saying. He was a person who would always take action, but he would not just take action for himself. He was always looking at action for everybody else. And so that was his words in action itself. So it's very interesting to see. Now, to take this conversation forward, we have the whole panel here with us. We've got Manish Pai, we've got Vijay Pai and Sita Ben. Welcome to the call, everybody. So I hope you're all ready with your questions about the Bhagavad Gita. I know it's such a vast topic to cover. And I'm looking forward to finding out loads more as we did last week. So Manish Pai, over to you.
Thank you, Nishit Bhai. Welcome, viewers. Wonderful to have you on board on this live session. So last week we covered Bhagavad Gita, or first part of it, and we are continuing in the same manner. I just got this Bhagavad Gita with me. This Jay Bhai gave to me, so it's very special for me. And yeah, it's a wonderful scripture of authority for us. And continuing on, what we saw in the video is Jay Bhai talking about the three gunas and how it relates to us as human beings and how it's embedded in a whole of the creation. So could you please elaborate more on the three gunas, Sita Ben?
Yeah, so I mean, as Dad covered it in the video, it's really important that we don't just sit there like a lump and just be like an inert piece of matter. It's really important that we act. So action is better than inaction. So even if that action has been driven through a purely selfish motive, that's better than just sitting on your sofa and doing absolutely nothing. So it's much better to do action. But the important thing the Bhagavad Gita tells is to keep acting all the time, working incessantly. Don't be lazy. Make sure we are active in everything that we do. And the important thing is, yes, you may start off by having very selfish motives, and that's okay. That's better than just doing nothing, absolutely nothing. So start off by working and doing these actions, even if they are for yourself only. You're only thinking about your own personal gain, your own personal benefit. You're still making progress, because the more you sort of try and chisel your actions, every time you do an action, try and think, okay, I've been thinking I'm going to do this for my own benefit. Let me try and think about doing this for the benefit of somebody else. The more practice we have, the more action we do, the more practice we have of doing something for the greater good, for someone else's benefit. And it really reminds me very much of Swami Vivekananda's words, because what he said is, it's good to go and do action, but when we act with a selfish motive, all that energy that we put into the universe is in a way sort of frittered away. And he uses the example of throwing a giant cannonball into a wall. You throw that action out into the world, but all the energy is frittered away if it's done with a selfish motive. But if you do it with a selfless motive, if you're not even thinking about yourself, you're just working for the benefit of others, for the good of others. It's like throwing a boomerang into the universe. You throw that goodness out into the world, and you will get such tremendous energy and spiritual strength returned back to you. And that is that's priceless. Although it's very, very difficult to get to that point, we all have to keep chiseling away at our own actions and our own sort of motivations, because by acting selflessly, we develop that tremendous spiritual strength within us. The problem is, like, we don't have the patience to wait around and sort of keep chiseling away at ourselves. We're so keen on getting that short-term selfish benefit from our actions, like praise or appreciation or whatever it is, a gift or whatever, that we don't think of it in an purely unselfish way. And what Swami Vivekananda says is that even if you have the capacity to work like even 5 days or even 5 minutes without thinking about any personal gain for yourself, then you have the power within you to become a powerful moral giant. So I think that's a tremendous sort of carry on from what the Bhagavad Gita was talking about. Keep chiseling away at our own sort of personal motivations and try and focus on the needs of others, and we will gain such tremendous spiritual strength. Vijay Pai?
I think Sita, you got it very beautifully. All I can add is that, the three gunas are such a powerful idea. I mean, if you look at, it comes from the earliest Sankhya Darshan, where, Kapil Muni actually talks of the idea of Purusha and Prakriti. And Prakriti basically is creation material. And the three gunas are actually in the Gita, you see them everywhere. Born of nature, made of nature, forces of nature, they're all linked to each other. And what Jay Bhai explained is absolutely true. I think for all of us, we have this idea that after 65, I'll work myself, I'll earn enough money for myself, I'll have enough money in the bank, now retire and just relax and, watch TV or go on the beach. That's not the Hindu way, actually. The way is to work and work selflessly till the last breath, because this is whole life is what life is about. I mean, if you just sit and enjoy for yourself, okay, it's not bad, as Jay Bhai said, do something at least for yourself. But ultimately, it's how you serve others, and that's what really matters. So I think we should keep that in mind. Imagine if everybody did, as Sita mentioned, 5 minutes of work. Everybody's selfless for 5 minutes. Can you imagine how the world would change? It'll be absolutely awesome. Just 5 minutes. But the problem is that to get to the stage, it takes effort. And the key thing, that's why we should go, as the Gita says, I think, from tamas, move to rajas, and the final goal is to sattva. And that will take you towards your, moksha. So absolutely. I mean, that's why giants like Swami Vivekananda is so revered. Even in India, I think the last time I did was he was by far the most popular, spiritual giant that everybody kind of voted him to be the most popular one. Primarily not because he's praying every day or showing openly, building temples. No, purely because of service of mankind. And that's the really proper sattvic way. But the three gunas are such powerful words. They can apply to almost every material kind of, activity, mentally, spiritually, physically, to food. And people use these words all the time. So you can imagine how amazing Kapil Muni was to present to us these three very powerful words, which in fact can be used for almost anything in the universe. So all in all, what I say is, yes, take Jay Bhai's message seriously. Go out and do selfless activity and change the world. Manish Bhai.
Yes, that's a wonderful way of looking at it. As Sita Ben Vijay Bhai explained, how we can put this in practice. With three gunas, we, as Vijay Bhai mentioned, they are associated with food. Some food are considered tamasic, some rajasic, and some sattvic. So what's that? How can food be with these gunas, Sita Ben?
So I mean, the thing is, like, you can notice it even without even having this sort of spiritual angle to things. If you eat certain kinds of foods which are not good for your body, things like fried foods and fatty, sugary foods, you automatically feel tamasic. You automatically feel lazy and inactive. You just want to slob around on the sofa. You don't want to do anything. But when you have healthier food, you feel much more lighter. You feel more active. You want to go out there and do something. So even without the spiritual angle, we can sort of feel the difference of the different kinds of foods that we consume. And that's, in a way, it ties in so beautifully with this sort of spiritual message that if you want to go out there in the world, make sure that you are physically well yourself, make sure you eat the right foods, get the right nutrition, so that you have the energy to go out there and do something positive in the world. And the other thing which I really find very interesting is the fact that even the attitude of the person who is preparing the food can also make a difference. So, if somebody is very angry and grumpy and they're making the food, you might even start to feel that rubbing off on you when you eat it. And I think I've said this before, that's why I think everyone loves their mother's cooking, because the mother always cooks food with tremendous love for their children. And everyone always says, oh, my mum's food is the best, this and that. So I think that's probably like showing the love that the mother has put into preparing the food as well. So it has a tremendous benefit. Vijay Bhai?
Yeah, I think obviously our body is sustained by nourishment, and nourishment comes from food. Literally all of it comes from food, right? So of course, what we eat decides how we develop our bodies, how we develop our minds. So generally, I mean, what people say is they're eating, mild foods like vegetables, grains, basically eat more fruit and veg, in a way, yes. Then you have a healthy body, you have a healthy mind. If some really heavy stuff, if it's too much spicy food is not good for you. But of course, it varies from tradition to tradition. Some Hindus will say eating onion and garlic is supposed to be tamasic. Some it's rajasic. And some would say even chilies are actually rajasic or tamasic, because they can be quite, some are really hot chilies. So people have different categories. But I would say eat stuff, mild stuff as much as you can for your healthy body. That's all I can add to that, Manish.
That's wonderful to hear. Sitaben, loved your explanation about Mother's World. That's so wonderful. We move on onto the Bhagavad Gita, but we take on one question that was last week asked. Who actually wrote Bhagavad Gita? And that is a big question because the name that comes with Bhagavad Gita is Ved Vyas, but as we understand, Vyas was a compiler. So who actually wrote Bhagavad Gita? Vijay Bhai.
Okay, I think, to be honest, we can never say we're totally sure. It's only one author, and it's called Vyas, because Ved Vyas actually is the author of many things. He's author of some of the Vedas, the Mahabharata. The Brahma Sutra is also called Brahma Sutra, as well as called Vyas Sutra, right? So I personally believe that Vyas is more like a pseudonym. There's quite many ancient rishis of India, they didn't really want to put the name forward and say, I wrote this, I wrote this. In many ways, when you share gems of, precious gems of life or about divinity, you don't want to say eagerly, it's me. You say, look, these are the truths, these are divine truths. So I guess in that sense, Ved Vyas is more like a pseudonym in my view. But yeah, I guess some people challenge that. But Mahabharata is such huge, it's such a vast epic that I'm pretty sure there must be more than one contributor. But the Vyas is a good name to have, I think. Yeah, say written by Vyas is just a pseudonym. So I'm quite comfortable with that. Sita?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's very difficult to pinpoint the exact one author of the Bhagavad Gita, but in a way, you could say that Krishna was the author because, Krishna is God. And all of these are sort of what all of these amazing spiritual individuals have discovered through, through their own spiritual experiences, through finding God, basically. So in a way, you could argue that it was Krishna. And one of these individuals who sort of put it all together are like the trumpets, who are sort of, or the mics, which are spreading it to the world, really. So you could think of it that way. And I think that the wonderful thing is the humility of these spiritual giants, these individuals who have had these amazing experiences and discovered these beautiful things. They're not, trying to put their name out there saying, this is me, as Vijay Bhai was saying. They just want it to be there for the benefit of humanity. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Wonderful to hear that. We take the next question. So Bhagavad Gita mentions part of knowledge, and this part is not very popular, and very few people seem to follow. So what is the part of knowledge all about, Sitaben?
Yeah, so I mean, the path of knowledge is, using your intellect to try and make sense of the world. And there are two sort of tools that we use to try and make sense of the world according to ancient Hindu philosophy, which is Vivek, which means discrimination, trying to discern what is real and unreal in the world. And the second tool that we use is Vairagya, which means dispassion. So not being attached to the material things of the world. And it is an incredibly difficult path because it's not a tangible thing like Karma Yoga, you tangibly go and do an action, or Bhakti Yoga, you go and sort of worship your deity that you love. In that sense, it's not a tangible thing, but it's a sort of an intellectual exercise, which is much more difficult. And the thing is, when you say intellectual exercise, it's not, people sitting around drinking cups of coffee while they're thinking and saying, oh, I'm going to become enlightened. It doesn't work like that. With the path of Gnana Yoga, it's not just theoretical, it's very practical because you need to go and experience it for yourself. So these are the two tools which are given in the path of Gnana Yoga. And I think there's a lovely example to help us understand what it's all about, because it sounds so abstract. And the example which is given is, imagine you are in a dark room and you're sort of like looking, you can't see anything in the room, and you're kind of searching for the door handle to try and reach the light, and you kind of try and touch everything in the room. You touch the bed, you touch the sofa, and you say, oh, it's not that, until eventually you get to the door handle and you can turn the handle and find the light, open the door and find the light. So the path of Gnana Yoga is a bit like that. It's a process of looking through everything in the world, like looking through everything in your room, saying it's not this, until eventually you're able to hit the jackpot and discover that reality for yourself. So it's not just philosophizing and intellectual exercise. It's much deeper than that, but it's a very difficult path and it's quite an abstract path to follow. Vijay Bhai?
I think absolutely, Sita. The example, I really like the example of dark room. I mean, that's where Vivek actually comes in. Vivek means discrimination. What is ultimately temporal and what is ultimately permanent? And you keep on touching everything. No, it's not. But if you can figure that out, that everything in this universe we see ultimately is temporal, it's not permanent. So what is that thing that's permanent? When you search for that, as Sita mentioned, ultimately find that all this temporal stuff not really exist, it actually goes, and the permanent. And for that, you need two things, of course, as Sita mentioned, the Vivek, discrimination to work out. But you can't work out if you have, attachment. So you need this passion. Otherwise, you're going to favor something, right? You say, so you have to have this detachment, look at something from afar. As you get stuck into it, then you can't really work out. So it's a very, very powerful thing. Well, ultimate goal, of course, of Karma Gnan Marg is actually to find out that you are not this body, you are actually something different, which is the Atma. And that's your goal for that. But it's not that easy to do it through purely knowledge, I mean, if you do it through Karma Marg, eventually the same thing, you did kind of more unconsciously by working self, it automatically comes anyway. But the intellect is more like you could think about it and have this powerful Vivek and Vairagya tools to do that. So yeah, that's the key. That's why I guess it's not popular, but because you can't tangibly pick that up from intellect. You can't pick up these metaphysical ideas. It's very difficult to pick them up. So if people say, look, I'd rather do bhakti or rather do karma marg, it will come eventually anyway without using this intellect and look at these abstract ideas. So I guess that's why it's difficult. Yeah.
It's a wonderful explanation there, Sita and Vijay Bhai. So carrying on with this, was Raman Maharshi a Gnana Yogi, an example of a Gnana Yogi who used the thought experiment of who am I to reach the ultimate? Vijay Bhai?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Raman Maharshi was very special because at a very young age, it just happened. I think is the culmination of so many marriages or so many births. He just clicked to him. But yes, he absolutely understood what is actually ultimately true and what is not. And if you look at all his teachings, you can see in all his teachings he does it. I mean, he explains it so beautifully the way he does it. And when he sees everybody else, he sees the Atman more than the body. That's the kind of level he was living at. So you can say in that sense, yes, but the only thing is that he didn't have to put that much effort. It just came to him. I wish it happened to me, but I don't think it'll happen like that. But yes, I guess you could say that he's a Gnana Yogi in that sense. Yeah. Asita?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think when he was a small child, he went into the deepest of meditation just like that. And it must have been the result of many years of previous lives of hard work to get to that point. And he was a tremendous individual. You might think of somebody who is successful in the path of Gnana Yoga as being very sort of hard-hearted and cold and not displaying any warmth, but he was an incredibly warm person. He loved playing with children and animals and all of that. So I think, you have a tremendously soft heart, even though you follow this intellectual path. And he really hit the jackpot because the fact that he was so detached from his body, they were doing operations on him and he wasn't under any kind of anesthetic whatsoever. He was happily just watching, you're doing this to my body, that's not really who I am. But he was happy to just sit there and watch it, which shows an incredible sort of spiritual depth, the fact that he's not attached to his body, he's just sort of watching it like you're watching a film, really. So I think that's incredible.
That's wonderful to hear, Sita and Vijay Bhai. So we take the next part, which is very popular also, is a part of meditation, the Raj Yoga. And even, Ramakrishna Mission, many people, monks are advising part of meditation because it seems to be very straightforward and step-by-step part than the others. So what's your take on it, Sita?
Yes, so I mean, it sounds like it might be very easy, but it's actually probably one of the most difficult pathways because the fact that, there are 8 steps that you have to follow, but the first 2 steps you're not even ready to sit down to meditate in the first 2 steps because your mental frame needs to be you need to be in the right frame of mind in order to meditate because it's just not going to work otherwise. And those kinds of disciplines are, like truthfulness and celibacy and cleanliness and all sorts of these. There's 10 sets of disciplines that you have to completely master in order to be even considered fit to sit down to meditate. And I mean, I know especially for me, I'm not even capable of like fulfilling one of those disciplines, like being truthful to the core and all of these things, which are very easy to say, but very difficult to do. But yes, I mean, you know, you can even spend your whole life just trying to master one of those disciplines. And you might think, oh, I'm not really getting anywhere, but you are getting somewhere because you've led a very sort of disciplined, very majestic spiritual life, even though, you know, you may not hit the jackpot in this lifetime. It may require many lifetimes of hard work to get there. So yeah, it is a difficult path for sure. I mean, we have all these other pathways like Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga. And the beautiful thing is when you are successful in those, you kind of get an honorary degree in all of these more difficult ones like Jnana Yoga and Raja Yoga. So yeah, it's very difficult to master those disciplines and sit for long periods of time in meditation. But you can get there, and Swami Vivekananda is the most recent modern example of somebody successful in the path of Raja Yoga. Vijay?
I think, Sita, I'm absolutely I agree with you. Just to add a bit more on that, I mean, I think for monks, the reason why, you know, they actually promote this is because, as Jaybai used to mention in class when he teaches this topic, you said, look, at best, you'll achieve, you know, self-realization. At worst, you'll become a disciplined person and have all this all these powerful qualities in yourself. So as Sita mentioned, the yams, niyams that we have, you know, things like discipline, celibacy, you know, self-reflection, non-stealing, all these, you know, disciplines we have, you can imagine even if you don't get that, they're so powerful in your life. And so I think for monks, that is very important. This course is very important for monks. So they encourage more than anybody else to meditation because they have to develop all these yams and niyams before they actually move forward. So it really helps them in that sense. So I mean, I remember one thing also with Jaybai said that it also makes you align your, you know, your mental thoughts. It's like what you think is what you say. What you say is what you do. If you can align those three, and this comes from the yams, niyams really. If you can master those yams, niyams, you become a tremendously powerful, really focused and to the, you know, everything lined up. Not you think of one thing like, oh, I hate this person, but hey, how are you doing? You totally mess up you're totally out of sync, right? But so I think, okay, it's good for all of us. I think especially most of the monks, they encourage this kind of meditation. It really helps them develop who they are.
That's wonderful to hear. So we get all these four main yogas. We'll touch on Bhakti a bit later. And what Bhagavad Gita says is we can actually experience the ultimate reality, and we have this Vishwarup Darshan. What's going on with Vishwarup Darshan, Sita?
Yes, so I mean, it's a beautiful part of the dialogue where Krishna decides to show his true form to Arjun, who has been, you know, going through all sorts of doubts and fear and cowardice and all of that. And Krishna is encouraging him, go out and do your duty. And he showed him, you know, beautiful, majestic form of Krishna, which is incredibly powerful. And I think it would very much appeal to individuals who follow the path of Bhakti Yoga, who are, you know, follow the Vaishnava tradition, who love Krishna, who love Vishnu, because Vishnu is the one who preserves the universe and makes sure, you know, everything is set right in the world. So if you follow the path of Bhakti Yoga, these particular verses would be very appealing to you. And I think it just shows the glory and the majesty of this sort of spiritual idea that, you know, you can think of God with form like this, or you can think of God without form through the path of meditation. So the choice is yours. All of those different choices are present in the Bhagavad Gita. That's why it's just like the handbook that all Hindus should have with them, because, you know, if you just carry it around in your pocket and just read a few verses, like how Swami Vivekananda did when he was traveling around America. We talked about it last week. It kind of really recharges your batteries. It makes you feel empowered and uplifted. I know when you're feeling down and things are just not working out for you, just look at those verses and it will give you that strength. Vijay?
Yeah, I think that is, I think it's chapter, I believe, 11, Manishma. It's fantastic that, you know, this idea of Vishwarup, because I think it is said in the Mahabharata, if I'm not wrong, only two people actually saw Krishna as God. Literally, I think it's Vidur and Arjun. Others did see him, but they had doubt. These two had no doubt at all. Sanjay as well, yeah. So, but the thing is that the Vishwarup, I believe even it is in the Gita that you cannot see my form with your own ordinary eyes. I have to actually give you divine eyes. So it seems that Arjuna was given divine eyes just for that little moment to see, the supreme form. But it may be form of Krishna, but if you look at the form very carefully, with all the universe inside him, in many ways also like a principle. You can see the principal form of God as well. It can be seen as both, the way it's described in the Gita. You can see if you're otherwise you can see, yeah, okay, I see Krishna is just the name of the ultimate principle, which is vast and endless and timeless. So you can see it in both beautiful ways. So it's quite a nice form. It also reminds me of this. If you remember, Manishbhai, when the first atom bomb went off, and it was Julius Robert Oppenheimer. That's the first word that came out of his mouth. It's this universal form of God. And now I have become death, destroyer of worlds. And that's the first literally word. He said, I now quote the multi-armed form of Krishna. I am now become death, destroyer of worlds. So it seems like it's gone. I'm not sure it's a good at to say those words in the atomic bomb explosion, but the point is that form is seen as saying that there's far more to this universe than just a simple being. There's a lot more to this universe. Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. He does, there is in Gita this verse, Kalos me, where he's saying, I am the death and destruction and the time, all destroyer. I think you rightly mentioned that by saying that you cannot see God with physical eyes, what it's implying is the ultimate reality is not a physical entity, it's a spiritual entity and it's a spirit, and therefore you cannot see it with your own eyes. You need that spiritual experience to experience it. Wonderful way of putting it, Vijay, right? So we got this question, someone's asked, why does atheism exist even when all the questions are answered in Bhagavad Gita? Vijay?
Okay, I think one thing to make for Hindus, atheism is still for us but a pathway to a spiritual reality. Whether they agree or not, that's a different question. I think the distinction of atheism, theism, it comes because of people of theist who believe in a theos, a God sitting in the throne. So you have to have an anti-atheist. For us, all these Maya beliefs, you have agnostics, atheists, spiritualists, even spiritualism, which I don't like, the idea of mediums, whatever people use. Even atheists, they have some sort of endeavors, right, in life. They have some sort of goals, spiritual goals in life. Even they too are progressing spiritually. Maybe not totally aware of it, but they too are. This distinction is very arbitrary in Hinduism. And this is a very, very Western idea. I mean, you can say that, of course, Gita has answers most of the different questions, but everybody's different. Somebody said, no, I don't agree. I can't see a God, so I don't believe in that God. I'll rather pursue my life in different ways, do good things, live selflessly. So be it. Eventually, they will progress after many births. They will find who their true nature is. So I think we should try and, as Hindus, try and not fall in these Western concepts of these divisions. So everybody, as Jaybai mentioned, everybody is at their own stage of life, and all progress to spirituality from that stage of life. And we should kind of respect that, yeah? Sita?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, that's the wonderful thing, is it allows healthy sort of debate and dialogue. You're not sort of force-fed this book and said you must believe in this book. That's the beautiful thing about Hinduism. You're encouraged to think about it for yourself. And as Dad has said so many times, if anything doesn't make sense to you, reject it. And it's a very bold statement to make, but I think that's a very healthy way of moving forward in your spiritual journey. So you may not ascribe to a particular God, you may not think that God is a real thing, but just follow your heart, follow your intuition, and those things which are right for you will be attractive for you. So it might be music, it might be certain things like doing karma yoga, doing good work in the world. It may be just like that, without any tops and tails of religion or God, but you are making progress in that way. So being an atheist is not like, oh my gosh, how terrible that you're an atheist. We don't have that kind of thinking within Hinduism. It's healthy. If that's what appeals to you, then go for it. You don't need to believe in all these 330 million different forms of God. Go for what your heart and your intuition tell you. And as we were saying before, like whatever is inside you, you will start to sort of attract those things to yourself. So if you are loving action, if you're loving art or music, those things resonating within you, you'll be attracted to those things. And it's like a positive cycle of reinforcement, and that will help you to sort of progress in your own way. And it doesn't have to have the idea of a belief in God in it at all.
That's wonderful to hear, Sitaben. And coming back to Vishwarupa, when we realize that the whole universe is a kind of form of Brahman, and we see the beauty in it, we can fall in love with it. And that is the path of love, the Bhakti Yoga. Aptly in Bhagavad Gita, the Bhakti Yoga comes after the Vishwarup Darshan. So what's your take on path of devotion, Sitaben?
Yes, I mean, it's very appropriate that it comes after this. So I think Bhakti Yoga is one of the pathways which is the most popular, and it's considered to be one of the easier pathways because, you know, throughout our daily lives, we're so used to building relationships of love with our family and our friends and those around us. So we can make spiritual progress by extrapolating that relationship that we're so used to, like our mother, our father, our children, and sort of extrapolating that onto God. And I think the beautiful thing about Krishna is, you know, he is, such an amazing figure, because we can think of Krishna in so many different ways in terms of the relationship we have with him. So you get many, for example, a lot of elderly ladies, they love to think of Krishna as a baby. They love to develop a relationship of love with God as a child. You can think of Krishna as your sweetheart, like Radha did. You can think of Krishna as your friend, like Arjun did. So through his example of his life, you can actually build that relationship of love in so many different ways. And I think that's an incredible thing about Krishna as a personality. You can think of him as your son, as your friend, as your sweetheart. So many different ways that you can think about God as Krishna and develop a relationship of love with him. And I think another sort of very endearing feature of Krishna is the fact that, he's not just a goody two-shoes like Ram was. I mean, a lot of people find that appealing, that he was a goody two-shoes. But I think a lot more people actually like the fact that Krishna, right from his childhood, was the one who always broke the rules. He always broke the mold. He didn't follow the traditions, because sometimes these traditions, they get very stodgy and stuck and very dull and dead. Whereas when you break the rules, when you break the mold, it brings life, it's refreshing. And I think that's why Krishna is probably one of the most popular deities in Hinduism, because he really breaks the mold and says it's okay to have fun in the name of God, in the name of spirituality. You don't just sit there through boring rituals for hours on end. It's not like that. Bring life to spirituality. And I think that's really what Krishna is all about. Vijay bhai?
I think very nicely put, Sita. I think just to add to that, the idea of the Vishwarupa, as Manish bhai mentioned, is that in fact the whole universe is seen as God. I think even the Pushti Marg actually believe that the universe is actually Krishna in that sense. In the broadest sense, is Krishna. And then, of course, when you go to the next step, when you come to the chapter of the Bhakti Marg, it makes it easier to understand that actually God is everywhere. And the good thing about the Gita is Krishna states that whoever comes to me in whatsoever way, I accept thee. So there's no fixed way of doing bhakti as well. Or you must follow this, you must do puja 5 times a day, you must in the morning, evening. Do what you can. The best, whatever appeals to you is best. Krishna also, as Sita mentioned, there's so many different kinds of bhaktas, Vatsalya Bhav, Gopi Bhav. Choose the one you like best. And it's really interesting, on just to sidetrack a little bit, when you look at the life of Ramakrishna Paramhans, when he does all these, different kinds of bhavas, it's so interesting to see that he actually becomes that. That's the beauty about it. Because, as I mentioned last time, if somebody asks me why do, tribals worship trees, I can't answer because I've never lived among the trees, right? To me, from living in a house in an urban area, I can never visualize, no matter how hard I try. So the thing is, everybody's different. Some people are, brought up with, this kind of love, different kind of attachment. So Krishna actually accepts that people have different ways of seeing things. And that's why, Ramakrishna Paramhans, it reminds me when he was Gopi Bhav, actually it becomes a Gopi. So how must have I experienced that? And that's the trick, to keep that. So in a way, it's Bhakti Marg is so beautiful, because no matter who you are, no matter what pathway you use, how you want to worship for the path of Bhakti, Go for it, and Krishna will accept you.
Wonderful to hear about Bhakti Marg. But some people have this inbuilt devotion in nature in them, and when they hear some of these bhajans or stories, they feel that connection with the whole idea and get immersed in it. And some people with questioning mind will question and cannot relate to it. So is bhakti for everyone, or is it for only those people who actually relate to these ideas, Vijay?
No, you're right. There are some who are very rational thinkers. They go, no, 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 I don't understand what you mean by worshiping God in the temple. They rather go out in the woods and take a walk and enjoy nature. No, that's fine too. I mean, like my children are not really temple goers, but they love bhajans nevertheless because of the melody and the music. And so do I. We all love bhajans. But I think the thing is, again, we have to accept that people are different and people have. That's why Hinduism has got 4 different pathways to moksha. People can choose whatever. Because some people are not emotional by nature. They're very, very rational. They don't get moved easily by emotion. I said, no, I don't see that. So there are people everybody's different. So I think that's the key thing to keep in mind. Sita?
Yeah, so I mean, for some people, who are very emotive by nature, they love the idea of thinking of God with form because, you need that for the path of Bhakti Yoga. But, a lot of people, especially the younger generations these days, like they really have been encouraged through the education system to really think about things and logically look at the world. And when you think of a God with a form, there's a lot of philosophical problems which come with that. For example, the clearest example is, why is there so much suffering when God is meant to be all powerful and all loving? Why? And it's not just us human beings who are suffering, it's the entire living kingdom who is suffering. So what kind of a God is this? And if you ascribe to a God with form, it's very, very difficult to answer that question. Whereas if you have a more sort of rational approach to spirituality and you think of everything as a manifestation of spirit, and we are spirit, so it's our job, it's our responsibility to do something because we are spirit, we are the spark of God. That makes philosophically much more sense. So I think the wonderful thing is Hinduism caters for so many different kinds of mindsets, and you have to choose the path which suits you the best, basically. And I think pluralism is just at the heart of what we're all about, and I think that's very incredibly important because we all have very different standpoints. We're all at different points on the circumference of a circle, and we have to start from where we are, and that's what Hinduism encourages.
Wonderful to hear. We got one very interesting question. The question is, what is more powerful way to achieve God, renunciation or selfless service? Now, when we see Ramakrishna, he mentions not renunciation emphasizes a lot in Athamrita. And what we see with Sarada Mani is, he says, everybody is on your own, and so, serve everyone and consider them own. And self-service, selfless service would help with that, because then if you consider everyone your own, then basically you're serving everyone as your own. But which is the more powerful way to achieve God, Sita?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting question, because you often think that, you think of a renunciation as being the life of a monk, and you think of service as being the life of a householder. But actually, if you think about it, they are both going towards the same sort of direction. They're all going to the same trajectory, basically, even though they may look very different. So with the idea of renunciation, it's not about, giving up everything and everyone in the world. It's about giving up this small, limited version of who we think we are and who we love, and saying, I don't just love my small group of friends and family, I love the whole world as my family. So it's really showing that breadth. And when you think about selfless service, again, it's all about expanding who you think you are, because when you work selfishly, you have a very limited vision of yourself and your place in the world. Whereas when you work selflessly, you're again breaking those boundaries and saying, I'm seeing myself in everyone around me, and that's the best way I can worship my living God is through selfless service. So both of them are all about expanding our vision, expanding who we are, and expanding the way that we work in the world. So even though they may sound different, they are both going in the same direction. Vijay?
Asita, I'm on the same wavelength. I think they're the same. It depends how we look at it, right? Because even in selfless service, you're not really attaching things to yourself. So whenever you renounce it, who's working in the world, right? I mean, that's what a lot of monks do. They renounce it. They renounce the world, but they actually work in it and help the world out. So in a way, they're both. They may look different at a physical level, but ultimately they're the same goals. Yeah.
Wonderful to hear that. We conclude this chapter of Bhagavad Gita with last question for the day on Gita. That is, what is the main message of Bhagavad Gita? Vijay bhai?
It's renunciation. I mean, basically, again, same thing. Is to give up lower things for higher things. That's the main thing. I mean, because you're so much stuck in the material world. If you get stuck in that, it always attract us, and we'll always play at the as so-called the lowest common denominator. We'll never transcend that. So I think to give up smaller things for higher things and find your true goal of who you truly are. And that's what it's about. And if you look at chapter 2, Gnan Marg, he was saying again and again that, find your true self. You are just not the body. How do you keep that message? And one way is to renouncing, then you find your true idea. Sita?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's a beautiful way of summarizing it, because all of these different ways of thinking about God and making spiritual progress, all of them are about breaking the boundaries of who we think we are. You do it through the path of devotion, then you identify yourself so much with that particular deity that you can't see yourself as being apart from that deity that you love. With the path of Karma Yoga, you can't see yourself as being different to the people that you are serving. So each of these pathways is all about breaking free from that limited vision of who we are and expanding who we understanding who we actually are. So the Bhagavad Gita is a tremendous book which encompasses such a variety of different ways of making progress, but they all have the same underpinning message to them.
Wonderful to hear, Sita Ben Vijay bhai. But the renunciation is so hard. I mean, we work all our lives to build this relationship with everyone around us, and we love them to bits. And as Ramakrishna says, actually, if you observe, not everyone, everyone has their own kind of pathway and their own ways. And in a way, we are, I think I'm not putting my words properly, but nobody is your own in a way. As he gives the example of the maid and how she looks after. But the renunciation is such a hard thing for most people, and it just seems very hard. How can somebody renounce anything, Vijay bhai?
So I think the renounce, one thing to keep in mind is that if I serve somebody selflessly, but of no benefit to myself, no gain to myself, in a way that is also still renunciation, because you are not building anything for selfishly. So you have actually given up. I mean, for that there's nothing wrong with that. So that is still serious. I think the key thing is at your individual level, are you giving things up for higher things? And that is the key message. I don't think Krishna actually say that go sit in a corner, give everything up and do nothing and renounce everything, but don't hide away. I don't believe that is. I know there have been great rishis in India who lived away in a hut in the Himalayas, but generally I kind of like Ramakrishna Paramahansa's idea. Live in the world, is renunciate, yet serve society. That's how I see renunciation in that sense. But yeah, it's still very hard to give up personal things, because our senses always attract things. How do we discipline them? And I've noticed, I tried that a lot myself, but not with that much success, is that to try not to play the low level games. Like somebody says, oh, why do you do this? Why is this messy? Why is that? So if you spend a whole life there, we just pass away thinking like, we never think of higher things. So how do you translate smaller things we spend all our lives playing around with, playing at a lower level? How do you translate go to a higher level? And the key thing is to give up small things, small behaviors, get into small little, things and move at a higher level. And that's how renunciation works. Give up smaller things for higher things. Ultimately, you find your self-realize, then you give up all the material things totally. Sita?
I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. And Sri Ramakrishna also uses that beautiful example of yes, the maid who always thinks about her own children at home, even though she's looking after her employer's children. And another beautiful example he says is it's like you put oil on your hands before you crack open a jackfruit, because otherwise your hands will get incredibly sticky. So you have to have that oil of spirituality before you immerse yourself in the world, otherwise you get very attached to the things of the world. So I think it's really important to have that sort of spiritual underpinning before we sort of immerse ourselves in the world. Otherwise it's very, very easy to get sort of caught up. And I think the thing that I particularly find very hard is, you know, you are so attached to the people around you, you know, your family and your friends, and you think, oh, you know, you're always sort of worried that what's going to happen, you know, in the future and all of that. But I think, you know, if we have this sort of spiritual background, spiritual understanding, we can think that actually they are all divine, I am all divine, we are all the same thing anyway, and we are all on the same journey going towards the same thing anyway. So all of us are the same spirit, and you know, we are in this world of appearance where we think this is me and this is my body and this is what I like and what I don't like, but all of that is an appearance. We are all the same thing at the end of the day, and I think that will hopefully broaden our vision and help us cope with difficulties in life.
Wonderful to hear that. Thank you for that, Vijay Sitaben. So we take question from Akshat Mishra. He's asking, how can we control our senses, the indriyas? Sitaben?
Yes, so there's that beautiful example in the scriptures which talk about our whole system being like a chariot, and you know, the senses are the horses and the mind is the one that controls the senses basically. So you know, we're always so sort of distracted by all the beautiful colorful lights and lovely food and this and lovely sounds and music, and we get very caught up in that in our everyday lives. But I think that's what a beautiful thing that Sri Ramakrishna says is that make sure we take out time in our day-to-day lives to just take a break from all of that rushing around and to have a time to reflect and pause and think about your spiritual progress. Because having these times away, these breaks from the rush of life, it can help you sort of refocus your energies, recharge your batteries, and not be so taken up by the things of the world. So that can help us gain a better sort of control on the things of the world. So just a little practical thing, just take 5 minutes out of every day, just to not listen to any noise, not have any distractions around us, and just take time to sort of pause and reflect, and that can help us get a better handle on our senses, hopefully. Vijay?
Manish, sorry, yeah. No, not more to add, yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you. So we take a next question from Judge for Tube. Is asking, what school did Krishna go to? High philosophy is very articulate. As we understand, it's mentioned in I think Mahabharata that he went to Sandipani Rishi Ashram. Yeah. That's where he go to learn his. That's the Gurukula he went to, but whether he learned his high philosophy there, we don't know. Sitaben, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that the wonderful thing is he was a spiritual giant in his own right. He already had that knowledge within him. He was an avatar, he's an incarnation of God. So rather than sort of learning, I think he's the one giving all this spiritual knowledge to the world.
Yeah, all I can add is, you know, in I think Gita is mentioned about 2 or 3 places that despite him being the Supreme Lord of the universe, he too comes to earth and interacts with us. So I guess in essence, we are very lucky. So he went to an ashram to teach us basically. If you look at the chapter 3, so Krishna says that I also do karma. I have nothing to gain from this world. I've achieved everything there's to do in this world. Yet I do karma. Why? Because teach us as examples of how to do things. So I guess in a way, he went to a Gurukul, studied hard. We should learn from an example and do the same. That's all I can add to that, Manish.
Thank you. We take a last question for the day. It's from Kunal. Is saying commonly said that idol worship or murti puja is wrong. What's your opinion on it? Is it really wrong when our religion itself indirectly permits us to do it when we know how our gods look like? Yeah.
So I think this is a very important question. People may get quite confused with this idea because first of all, the idea of the idol is a very, very Western term. I'll tell you how, because idol is worship of an object that is not God. That's why it's defined as dictionary. Yeah, it's not God. It's like self-worshipping. In the Western tradition, like they used to say that the idol has powers, like a stone has power. Like a special stone is this. I worship it because it gives me powers. We don't believe stone has power. For us, the word is actually a murti or a pratima. Means pratima, is an image which takes us towards God. It's not God itself. So in a way, because the abstract is very hard to visualize and kind of get hold of, you make it a finite form. So you worship the infinite through a finite form. And that's the key thing to remember here, because these are not the stone itself. Of course, we do all this ceremony of murti stapna, we give it infused with life. That's all true, no doubt. But ultimately, we see him as a supreme being in a form. So in a way, it's a gateway to worship the Supreme Lord. So we should not see it as the stone as having a power with nothing behind it. There's actually something behind it, is the Supreme Brahman behind it. That's the key way of looking at that. So I think the concept of idols, the way they see it in the Western, in the Abrahamic faith, is not the way we see it. And there's nothing wrong, Kunal, to worship images, because ultimately they'll take you to God as well, if that's what you prefer. Sita?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, a lot of people sort of think, oh, idol worship, because it means you're worshipping a piece of marble or a piece of stone. We're not doing that. We're using it as a symbol, as Vijay said, as a handle to get our minds around this very infinite, this very vast thing. We use an image to help us get our minds around it and build a relationship with that particular form of God. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and we shouldn't let other religions try and put us down for using images. And as Dad has said so many times, when people try and put down Hinduism, what about when you worship the cross? What about when you worship this particular book? That's also using, a finite thing to reach out to the infinite. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
And Jay Weiss said, worst form of idolatry is idolatry of the book. Don't get fixated on books. Do your rational faculty.
Fabulous. And where has the time gone by? What a fascinating discussion we've had this week. And so, yes, a very long, large topic, complex, but one that is thoroughly enjoyed by everybody who's, keen to explore about the main bits of Hinduism. So the Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata, and we've enjoyed this little discussion around it today. So before we close the session for the day, I thought it'll be nice to catch up on one last quote for the day. The whole one thing I took away from the Bhagavad Gita is when Krishna tells Arjun that you have to take some action. Even taking no action is still taking action. You cannot escape the consequences of taking action. Everyone in this world is stuck in a world of action. So better take the right action. And so with that, I hope you guys have a fantastic week ahead. From the team here at Hindu Academy, we wish you all a wonderful festive season. Be safe. Have a great time. And we will still see you next week on Saturday, 2 o'clock, as usual. Thank you, folks, for joining us today. And team, thank you so much for a great session again today. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next week.